My name is Marie Lootie. I go by the nickname Lootie. I am the second woman in the world to have actually run around the world. So I run the equivalent of close to 30,000 kilometers across 4 continents in their entirety. One of the continents I crossed was North America, which I ran from Seattle all the way to New York City. I was solo and unsupported for most of the journey. And I've got the world record also for the fastest woman to run around the world. It's only 7 of us in the world who have done such a run. So I guess that's why I'm here today.
Oh, fantastic. And we are going to be digging into your run. And you've also written a book about it as well. So I'm going to be talking about that in detail. Have you always been a runner? Nick, when you were a little girl growing up, did you come from a sporty, outdoorsy family? What were your early years like?
Yeah, a very outdoorsy family, sporty as well. But strangely enough, I was not at all interested in running. My dad was a marathon runner and my mom was a half marathon runner. But it never caught on with me at all. So I was doing other sports like team sports. I used to love baseball and softball. Not very popular in France where I grew up, but there happened to be a softball team in my town, and I absolutely loved it. And then later on, as I was, I went to university and my life revolved around other interests. I sort of stopped sports and I started smoking cigarettes, so which is not a really good combination. And by the age of 25, 26, I was truly out of shape. And I had a wake up call, which I describe in my book, I think in the opening chapter. And I swapped the pack of cigarettes a day to a run every day. And it changed my life, literally.
What was the wake up call that you got?
Okay, I'm French, but I've always been a nomad, so I lived in many countries in Europe. I was stationed in Greece for work, between Athens and the little town called Marathonos, which is marathon, literally. That's where the marathon come from. So I was stationed there. I was working there, and every day after work, I would go to the beach, and I was learning windsurfing. And those people at the beach were teaching me how to windsurf. At the end of every day, they would go for a run, like a short run, like a 5 kilometer loop in the nearby pine tree forest, very scenic, by the sea in Greece. And one day they invited me to join them. And I never thought anything of my smoking a pack of cigarettes a day or having quit sports many years ago. I thought I was still pretty much in shape. So I joined them. And about, I would say, 500 meters to 1 kilometer into the run, I had to stop. And these guys, they were twice my age, they were 50. And they continued, jogging along. And I said, sorry, guys, I'll see you back at the resort. I couldn't keep the pace. My lungs were on fire, my legs felt heavy and nothing worked. And I walked back to my car feeling absolutely a feeling of humiliation, anger as well at myself. And that's the days that I ditched everything I had related to smoking, ashtrays, lighters, and everything else. And I bought a pair of shoes and I started running every day, small distances first, because I just couldn't run till the marathon, which I ran. I ran my first marathon 8 months after that incident. So that's how I got the wake up call.
8 months later, you ran a marathon. How many years what was the time frame from running that marathon to then deciding that you wanted to run around the world? What was the journey to making that decision?
Well, I was always a nomad. So, like I said, I left France when I was 20, and I was sort of using my job. I had a double master degree, one in finance, one in law. So I was working finance for big corporates, and it sort of allowed me to go from country to country. Also, the fact that I speak 4 languages allowed me to travel. So my goal was to see the world. But the moment I started running as well, like I was 26 years old, when running came into my life, it sort of gave it another dimension. If I was stationed in a country for like 2 or 3 years, with running, you get to discover the place completely differently. And also, running is a big community connection vector as well. You get to meet the local runners, you get to go to the races and form friendships with people there. It's a very good ground for making connections. So it just sort of really embellished my experience as a nomad. And it was when I was 40 years old, so only 14 years after picking up running, that the idea of actually running around the world came to me in a strange moment of serendipity. And I just popped the idea and I didn't let it go. And 2 years after that, I was on my way.
What was the route? When did you know that you were going to go after a record? And were there specific rules that you needed to follow?
Yeah, so the moment I had the idea to run around the world, of course, the first thing I did was go on Google and say, does that exist? Has anyone ever run around the world? Because I was clueless. And in my research, the first thing I find out is about the World Runners Association, the WRA. And this association is made of the 6 runners who have actually before me run around the world. And so they have established a set of rules. So there are 10 rules. I can go through them briefly. And so it enabled me to, rather than being a constraint, it gave me structure. I was like, okay, now I can build this world run because I know, how it's done. And of the 6 people, there was only 1 woman and 5 men. So I knew that if I was really going for the world run, there was a high chance I would break the world record, but not because I'm an extraordinary athlete or anything like that, but simply because I was only the second woman. So the first one is always a pioneer and goes with every barrier that has to be broken down. All the barriers were down for me. It was much easier to focus on the running and in a way have the confidence that I could do it. The rules were it's sort of easy. So they're like you have to cross a minimum of 4 continents in their entirety. And by that, I mean from coast to coast. You have to choose one continuous direction, east to west, west to east, whatever you want, and stick to it. It has to be a continuous run. So, for instance, across a continent, however many days it's going to take you to cross that continent, every day you have to start exactly at the point you stopped the day before. And, there is no shortcut. You don't take a ferry. If you know in advance that there is a bridge there that is only for cars and you can't cross it, then you have to change your route so that you go around. But it has to be a continuous run throughout the continent. There is a minimum distance, which is just short of 30,000 kilometers. It's shorter than the circumference of the globe, but the reason for that is that the planet Earth is 70% water. So even with your best effort, if you follow a line of longitude, you will never run 40,000 kilometers. So that's how this has been calculated. And that's how I built my route. So I chose to run across Europe, part of Asia, Australia, North America, South America, and return to Europe via a stretch on the African continent. So that would be 4 continents in their entirety and 2 continents on which I was running bits and pieces. So that was the route I had planned.
On my wall, I've got like a giant map of the world. And when I look at it and when you think of the world, it is just so massive and almost like so overwhelming. And I suppose when you started having these initial, thoughts and ideas, what made you keep on going? Because there'll be so many people who just be like, it's too big. It's too overwhelming. Maybe I'll just do an ultra marathon instead. But making that commitment and making that decision, I suppose, what was your why? What was driving you?
Exactly. And this was finding my why and having it at the forefront of my mind all the time was something that I was very careful to pay attention to during my preparation. Because although we are still to this date only 7 people who have done it, I tell you, there are a lot more who have started and have given up, either because of injuries or lack of motivation, many reasons. And I thought the last thing I want is to give up because this is not strongly enough anchored in me. And very quickly, I came up with a sort of a little motto that summed up exactly what I wanted. And it was something along the lines of, I'm running around the world because I want to see the world. I want to have fun doing it. And I want to appreciate every step of the way. And that summed it up. So if ever there would be a moment during my wild run where I would be like, gee, what am I doing? There is a snowstorm. I can't see 50 meters in front of me, or I'm stuck in a big mountain range, the Andes or the Rockies. What am I doing here? It would just come up naturally. Like I didn't even have to call for it. It's like I knew I was running around the world to see the world, to have fun doing it and enjoy every step of the way. And this was true to me wherever I was and whatever the circumstances or the weather condition or terrain condition. So it just worked perfectly. It fitted who I was, who I am, and what I wanted to do.
Did you get sponsorship? Did you what was your budget for your run?
Entirely self-financed. So before I launched on my world run, I was a finance director. I was living in Singapore at that time. I had to put everything I had into it. There are several reasons. First of all, I don't have a name. I'm a nobody. Of course, I've run marathons. I've even done a few Ironman races, triathlons, and all that. But my times are very pedestrians. My best marathon ever was in 3 hours, 25, I think, minutes. It's a good time. It's a very good time, but it's nothing like what champions do, more than 1 hour less than me. I have never won any big races. I don't have a palmarès, I don't have anything to my name. So it's very difficult to go to companies when you are a nobody. And second of all, I don't have any other comparison to a race that, if we call it a race, that lasts for more than 2 years, anywhere between 2 and 3 years. Even the biggest sailing challenges, sailing around the world or so, they last at most a few months. It's very difficult to retain the attention of your audience for so long, and you're going at a snail pace. I mean, I was running a marathon a day. Okay, it might seem a lot, but like you said, if you look at the map of the world, it's nothing. 42 kilometers a day, that's so it's very difficult to get sponsorship. Of the 7 we are to have run around the world, not many have gotten major sponsorship just because it's such a niche thing. That's my explanation for it.
So, did you sort of commit to wanting to run a marathon per day? Was that like your minimum that you would do?
Yeah, I had in the 2 years of preparation, because it took me 2 years from the moment I had the idea to the moment I started, 2 years elapsed. And in my preparation, of course, I was testing what sort of distance am I comfortable with running every day and then running it again the next day and the next and the next. So I did many preparation trips where at first I would say, okay, I had this marathon distance in my mind because the marathon is so important in my story. I've told you the story of how I picked up running in the town of Marathon, and it is a distance that everybody can relate to, even if they are non-runners. And so in my preparation, I started with this marathon distance in mind. And it is true that when you run without any pressure at all, like you don't have the time pressure, nobody is waiting for me anywhere because I'm running alone and unsupported, then without any pressure, a marathon becomes a very feasible distance to do, especially if that's all you have to do all day. So physically, I had 2 years of preparation where I knew that this 42 kilometers a day was achievable and I was fine with it. So there was no real toll on the body when I started the world run. I felt I was prepared for it. Mentally, everything went nuts from day one because I had lived, like I said, a very nomadic life for 20 or so years before that. And that was a bit of what I call my drug. My drug is what is the next country? What is new? What am I going to learn? A new language, a new culture, a new culinary traditions, new everything. And when I start this world run, I've got this novelty effect every single day because every single day, everything is new. Going to a new place. I'm going to run on a road that is new to me, see the sunrise on the road this morning for the first time over these hills or trees or whatever. And the novelty repeated like that on a daily basis, it was such a kick for everything. I never really felt down. I never felt defeated. I never, ever had the thought of giving up. It never crossed my mind because this was exactly what I wanted. Exactly. And it was giving me so much more.
How are you making it work for you in terms of were you running with a backpack, with a car? What were you doing with like your stuff? Were you camping? Were you staying with friends? Were you just paying for a hotel or a B&B or a hostel every night? How did that side of the logistics work?
From the very beginning, when I started planning this world run, I really went down. I had this big Excel spreadsheet where I was looking at Google Maps on my big computer screen and trying to find, okay, if I leave the west coast of Europe, where am I 40 kilometers after? Do I hit a big town? Is there somewhere I can sleep? Okay, I can sleep there. and etc., etc. So, I mean, it was 2 years of planning, almost stage by stage, just to prove myself that it was feasible and just to know what would be the longest stretches of road where I would have nothing at all, like no shops, no place to sleep or whatever. This happened especially in the US because my route was taking me across the state of Washington and Idaho, Montana, North Dakota. And there are some stretches there. I remember especially around Miles City and Billings, where you have to go like maybe 150, 200 kilometers without meeting a town at all. So I knew I would have to camp. I knew I would have to be self-sufficient with my food and everything. I was fine with it. In terms of equipment, I went with the bare minimum, like literally 3 running kits, 1 pair of shoes, 1 set of casual clothes, something hot for, like hat and gloves for the winters. But the weight of my equipment was anywhere between 12 and 15 kilos, depending on whether I was carrying my camping gear or not. And I didn't want to carry that on my back because it would have put me at risk of injury even more, like putting more pressure on my body. So I had a stroller, like a baby stroller. And I had my equipment in it, protected, like a waterproof bag and everything. So it was kind of funny because people thought I was a mom, doing my daily run with my baby inside. And it was confusing for most people, but it was just me and my bag running around the world. And so that was it.
What goes on mentally in terms of are you thinking? Are you listening to audiobooks, podcasts? Are you, I don't know, what's going on inside mentally inside your mind?
It was very much what I called a sensorial as well experience of the world, because as you're running, you're smelling the trees, the earth, you're seeing the light over the landscape. When you stop in places, when you're running through villages, you get to taste as well the local dishes, the local delicacies. You hear sounds, it can be the wind in the trees, or it can be music coming from here or there. So I try not to give myself any more distractions because I thought I had already plenty of distractions. If I opened all my senses to what was around me, there was so much to catch. I didn't want to miss anything. Like I said in my, why am I doing this? I wanted to enjoy and appreciate every step of the way. So that was a part of it. And I know most people, one of the questions I had most was, have you never been bored? And this question always floored me. I was like, I wish I could take you with me on the journey I've been on. You would not be bored any day. Even as I crossed the desert in Australia, I crossed a desert that was 1,200 kilometers long. And yes, it's long. And yes, if you see it from afar, you'd think, oh, that's the same landscape throughout. You'd be just bored running day in, day out through that. But it is not, and although it is a desert, there are a few trees and bushes, and there is wildlife, and there is, you have the sensation to be so privileged to run in these amazing places that, to me, boredom never had its place on my journey. I just don't connect with it at all.
Do you speak French, English? Do you speak Spanish?
No, I speak French, English, German, and Greek, of all languages.
And Greek as well, amazing.
Yeah.
So, you did 4 sort of blocks. You did, ran across sort of Europe, North America, South America, Australia. Let's sort of just take each one. Like, Europe was first, was it?
Yeah, and what a challenge.
What are some of the stories from Europe? What are some of the highlights, some of the challenges?
I have one word: COVID. I
Oh,
started the world run. I started my world run in December 2019, 6th of December 2019, to be precise. It's exactly 3 months before COVID came out. And the thing is, as COVID came, I had already crossed all of Portugal, the coast of Spain, France, and I had entered Italy. And if you remember correctly, after China, Italy is where there was the first cluster of COVID in Europe. And Italy was the first country to declare a national lockdown. And I was stuck in there. And of course, I was ejected from the country because I had nowhere to stay because all the hotels and everything would close. So I was given a sort of a laissez-passer, a carte blanche to go to the airport and fly out of the country. And that's all I could do. So I was grounded for 3 months. because all of Europe was then into lockdown. So movements from town to town were forbidden. Anyways, there was nowhere for me to stay because it was illegal. You couldn't go into any hotel or Airbnb or all these things. So I was grounded for 3 months. And then when the borders finally reopened, the challenge started because some countries were closed, some countries were open, and it would change constantly. It was before the vaccination. And not only that, but every other continent, like the US, South America, Australia, Asia, they were all closed. They wouldn't welcome any tourists. So I knew that even if I managed to make my way to Istanbul very quickly, there was nowhere else for me to go. So the crossing of Europe was supposed to be, and listen to that, 6 or 7 months and 7,500 kilometers. It ended up being 1 year and a half and 15,500 kilometers. This is crazy. So I'm going around the world, and 15,000 or more into my journey, I'm still stuck on the very first continent. That was quite a story, but it was a challenge. But it also made me cross so many European countries that were absolutely not on my list because my route would change on a daily basis depending on what was happening around me. I'm not saying that for, I respect very much all the people who have suffered through COVID and through the disease even now. But for me, it just became a giant maze, like almost a game of where can I go next? And that's what Europe was. And it was only the first continent. Can you imagine?
So then where did you go after that?
So after that, every continent to the east of Europe, namely Asia and Australia, were closed and wouldn't welcome tourists, although had been stuck in Europe for already a year and a half. So I contacted the WRA, the World Runner Association, and I said, look, I've been meandering 1 year and a half through Europe, running every day and all that, 15,000 plus kilometers. Can I join the next continent that opens its door to tourism? Because otherwise, in 10 years, I'm still trying to go somewhere. And they gave me an exemption. So they said, okay, you can bypass Australia and go to the next one, North America. And you'll do Australia whenever the doors opens to tourists again. So I went straight to the US, and it was in August 2021. And that's when the vaccine was just introduced. So I flew to Seattle, got my vaccine, and then I was able to resume. And it went fantastic. The US was a magnificent crossing. It was almost magical run throughout the US from August, and I arrived in New York in November, mid-November, I think. Yeah, that was just great.
Did you have to run over the Rockies?
Yes, of course. So from Seattle, I went over what is it called? Snoqualmie Ridge, Snoqualmie Pass. I remember that. Then I went down towards Spokane. And then when the big crossing of Montana, North Dakota, then I remember one number, especially like from Seattle to the next big city, which was Minneapolis. There was about 3,500 kilometers of just running through what I guess you guys call the flyover cities, you know. And so when I reached Minneapolis, it was a big shock of run in the wilderness, and all of a sudden I'm back in the urban jungle almost. It was a beautiful country, and I met so many people, especially in Montana and North Dakota, welcoming me, sometime in their home, offering me a meal, a beer. It was just amazing.
So how long would you be running for each day? Like how long would it take you to do the 40 odd K?
Oh, I would do it in the morning. So I would usually start at dawn as the sun rises, and I would be done by lunchtime, more or less, because you have to realize that this 42 kilometers a day is an average. So there would be days, for instance, in the US, because of the distance between cities, sometimes I had to run more. So the biggest distances would be something like 62 kilometers, I think was my biggest day. So yes, I would try to arrive at my destination by lunchtime, sometime a late lunch, but I like to have food when I arrive, and if possible, a good beer as well. And so that was my pace. Yeah.
I'm just getting really relaxed vibes from you, which I absolutely love. Like it was just almost, it just sounds really quite idyllic. Wake up, run 42, run your distance, find somewhere to have lunch, have a beer, chill, relax. What would you be doing in the afternoons? Would that be when you would be like writing or documenting or having to do social media?
Yeah, exactly. So I had two GPS trackers, and also that's one of the rules of the WRA is that you have to give your GPS data every day. I mean, whenever you have Wi-Fi, you have to download them anyway because everything has to be documented. So I would be downloading my GPS data on Garmin and Strava, making them public, like making a Facebook or an Instagram post. I would also be writing my daily blog. I had a website, posting my pictures, sometimes a social media post as well. I would be updating my website because I also had a live tracker with me, like a satellite tracker that was tracking me, my every movement, in addition to the GPS to confirm that the GPS route that I'm posting was really me on the road. So it's another level of verification. So I will be doing all this admin job during the afternoon and also booking my next accommodations or checking my route because, things happen. Sometimes there is a storm, a route is closed, you have to reroute yourself. So I would be reading the news and also, of course, visiting the places I'm in, whatever town or little village I'm in, I'd like to go out and get a feel, get a vibe for the place and meet people if that happens. And yeah, just really, get all the impressions I can get of the places I ran through. So that was the afternoon. And then I would go to bed fairly early, like by 9 o'clock at night, I think I would be in bed.
And were you sleeping pretty well throughout this?
Yes, what I noticed was I almost doubled the amount of sleep I needed compared to my pre-world run. I used to sleep maybe 5 hours a night or something when I was working, and in the world run, yeah, I needed at least 8, 9, maybe 10 hours of sleep a night. So yeah, I think that was the most noticeable adjustment I noticed was in the sleep.
Did you ever suffer with like fatigue or like anemia, or were you taking supplements or trying to make sure that you were getting, I don't know, your protein or creatine or BCAAs or, like vitamin D, vitamin C or anything extra that you needed to take? Or did it not really sort of affect you? Like obviously like your body adapts, but you didn't need any sort of extra support.
Part of my preparation was also to test if I could run and just almost teach my body to find anything it needs from whatever I can find. Like I was living in Singapore, I was doing most of my training either in Asia or in Australia. And my principle was you eat what you find, you eat till you are not hungry anymore, and your body will learn to use that as a fuel because the exercise is repeated. It's a marathon every day. The reason I was doing that is I couldn't possibly be dependent on anything because I'm self supported, I'm solo around the world. If I'm, let's say, dependent on some sort of extra vitamins or energy drinks, energy gels, whatever you name them, how am I going to do when I'm in the middle of the desert in Australia? Where do I find this? Where do I find this in South America? How do I? If you are dependent on things, it limits your freedom and somehow it constrains you. And the funny thing that I notice is that my diet has varied enormously. Like if you talk about the Mediterranean diet in Europe, with a lot of proteins and good carbs and all that, to when I was crossing Montana and North Dakota, and my only choice when I would reach the local saloon would be either a burger and fry or a pizza and fries. So not exactly the same qualitatively as in Europe. But what I noticed was that my performance was not affected at all. It would remain constant almost throughout the four continents. So, but I think it's also the nature of the beast. When you are consistently running these long distances, it's not a hobby. It's not a run you do to go fast or to beat your previous record. It's your lifestyle. And so I guess your body adjusts to how you live.
Tell us more about South America. Like that sounds like an incredible experience.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was incredible. It's the only continent I had never set foot before the world run. So I started just at the top of Patagonia on the Chilean coast, and I went all the way north toward Valparaiso on the coast, a beautiful place. And on the way I ran through all the volcanoes regions. The beautiful, this part of Chile is literally stuck between the ocean and the Andes. So you can imagine the sort of landscapes you are running through. It's majestic. And then as soon as I reached Valparaiso, I knew I had to turn east because my finish point in South America was in Buenos Aires on the other coast in Argentina. And of course, in between Chile and Argentina, you meet the famous Andes. And it was the most amazing experience of my world run. Was running from sea level to this pass which materializes the border between Chile and Argentina. It's at almost 4,000 meters. It's Cristo Redentor above Los Andes in Chile. And you run from sea level, from a proper city, Valparaiso, to every day you isolate yourself more and more. Everything around you is grayer and grayer, and it's also higher and higher. So nothing grows. You just have rocks around you, and the mountains grow taller and taller. You know, there is the Aconcagua there, you know, the highest mountain in the world outside of the Himalaya range. That's right there, and I could see it, you know. And it feels such a privilege as you continue running through, because I knew every day I was thinking, if it was not for this idea of running around the world, I would never be here. I would never go here on foot. I would never experience that. How many human beings have been so privileged to experience what I'm experiencing now, to see it, to feel the world in this way? So it was at the same time very difficult because, you know, it's not easy to run a marathon up to 4,000 meters of altitude. And yes, it is hard, but the rewards are so much bigger than your effort. It almost dwarfs it completely. And every day was such joy and satisfaction. But it was beautiful. And then from this point at 4,000 meters, it was all the way down to Argentina, and then the big plains of Argentina, all the way through to Buenos Aires, which is such a beautiful, lively, exciting city, really. Yeah.
And you actually finished that part of the run on International Women's Day, which I think is quite special because you were actually running for women as well, and you've been very inspired by your grandma. Would you like to share more about your reasons and your grandma as well?
My grandmother was the director of the first feminist library in France, which still exists now, though my grandmother is no longer. And she was not exactly what I would call an activist. I've never seen her, you know, parodying or whatever, but it was more in intellectual way of, she taught me without teaching me from a very young age about the differences of treatment between men and women. I remember that afternoon where I was reading by her side. I was on vacation at her place, and she puts her book down and she says, "But Mary, do you realize at that time a woman needed the approval of her husband to have a bank account?" And I looked at my grandma like, what sort of century is she talking about? But she was talking about not so long ago, you know, it was in the 60s. And I guess she was so sensitive. It was so important for her, uh, that she instilled in me the sense that there is nothing I cannot do. It's not because I'm a woman that things are out of reach for me. They are just as much in my reach as they are to a man, you know. And if I want to be a nomad, if I want to run around the world, if I want to climb to whatever, or even if it could be in my professional career, if I want to be a finance director and, you know, have a CFO position in Singapore, yes, you can count on the fingers of two hands how many CFO women in Singapore, I guess back these days, but I could be one of them. You know, I could be. There was nothing. Being a woman was often seen as, you know, you can't have the same career as a man. We still don't get the equal pay, of course. There are still things, but she instilled in me that it was only in my head and I could do whatever I wanted. So when I started the World Run, I wanted to be able to use my voice, even though it was not a very loud voice, to share that message with women. So I chose a charity called Women for Women International. And actually, I met them in, they are headquartered in Washington, D.C. So I met them and it was a beautiful meeting, encounter on the road. And I was I promised them to raise $1 per kilometer run. So I raised, short of $30,000 for them. But it was important for me that it was done also for others, to get an example maybe of an area where barriers are only in your head. And yes, you can be a tiny woman and not particularly athletic otherwise, but still go on to whatever challenge you wish to put your mind on.
Take us over to Australia. Did you fly into Perth?
Yeah, Perth first, yes. By the little beach of Cottesloe, yeah.
Did you run along the long road, which I've completely forgotten the name of?
The air highway, yes, the air highway. And it's basically when you leave Perth and you start running eastwards, after maybe less than 1,000 kilometers, you will reach the town of Kalgoorlie, where there is like the biggest gold mine in the world. And that's basically this segment of road is relatively populated because that was the road of the pioneers, those who were gold digging. So you pass by places like Southern Cross and all that. And there are little settlements, little villages. But after Kalgoorlie, not much. You go to the town called Norseman. And after Norseman, you are faced with this long road, which is almost a straight line of 1,200 kilometers all the way to Penang or Seduna. So you have 1,200 kilometers where the only trace of life is a petrol station every 200, 250 kilometers on average. So with this petrol station, usually there is a small motel, maybe 5, 6 motel rooms there, places to camp, and they do a little food, like a bit of food. It's a bit like a saloon in the US, but that's all you have every 200, 250 kilometers. And it's a long time, but it was beautiful because first of all, it's not a road that many people take. So all you find on this road are these big, massive trucks. They are called road trains. They are like 50 meters long. That it's like two trucks stuck together because they cross the country with goods to take goods from coast to coast. And so quickly, they know each other. And I guess they must have warned each other, careful, there is a woman running on the side of the highway. And, I would get people to honk at me, to offer me water, to check on me, to see if I was all right. I thought maybe it would be daunting. And, you hear always horrible stories of a woman alone, on these long stretches of road. But actually, all I've encountered is not danger, but kindness at every turn. So it was like I was almost feeling protected by them as a community. It was incredible. It was one of my best memories, really.
And were you running through the summer months?
No, Australia was between May and August, which for Australia is more like maybe autumn, I would say. The good thing with that is that some of the scary creatures are hibernating. Like, for instance, I didn't encounter any snakes, for instance, not many spiders either. Yeah, I didn't have the incredible heat of the summer. So it was the right season. Although, it was not something I planned for because of all the delays of COVID, etc. All the planning escaped me completely, but it turned out brilliantly for Australia.
You finished your world run in Sydney. Do you want to share more about the finish line? I suppose maybe coming to the end of the run, the end of the experience, and what that was like for you mentally, physically, emotionally.
It was like a rainbow in my head. It was so many different emotions and contradictory. First of all, it was weird for me to finish my world run in Sydney, which is halfway around the world to where my hometown is in France. Because in my initial plan and in the rules of the world run, you are supposed to finish where you started. So I should have finished in Europe, possibly in my hometown. But because of the COVID pandemic, I could only run Australia at the very end of my run. And that means I would finish in Sydney. And it's very far away from home. So it's a strange feeling of, it's not where it should be. Having said that, the French community, the embassy, the local consulate, rallied together and they gathered a little crowd of French people for me. Also, my parents flew halfway around the world to be there at the finish line. And one part of me was thinking, especially on that last day, well done me, I've done it, It was a crazy idea from the beginning, but I've gone all the way. A part of me had a bit of satisfaction, and another part of me was screaming inside and was saying, stop, we don't want it to end. We want it to continue. I love this. I want every day of my life to be the same as every day on the life on this world run because it was so magical every day. And it was a great sadness to see the journey come to an end. So I remember that when I meet this little crowd that had gathered in front of the Opera House in Sydney, it's almost like I went out of my body. I hugged my parents. I said thank you to everyone. I said a little speech probably, but I was looking at it from afar because the cocktail of emotions were so strong. I was incredibly angry that it was ending. And I was also incredibly satisfied with what I had done. It was, every emotion was so strong and contradictory. It was hard to deal with. But looking back at it now with, like I said, it's over 2 years that it's done, almost three. I am at peace now with it, but it is true that many days I'm like, I wish the journey had never stopped.
What was it like the day after? So I suppose, like, lying in the bed thinking, "I don't need to run today." Was there, like, a dichotomy where it was like, "But I should run, but I don't I don't need to run, but I want to run. Like, should I run? Do I not run?"
Not really. Strangely enough, I've never missed the running, although I've enjoyed it every single day. And I found it actually quite complicated to carry on running, casually after the World Run, because for 2 years and a half, I would wake up every day very early thinking, wow, my running is going to take me to another place. This is so amazing. So it was everything that the running was bringing me on a daily basis. And suddenly, when the World Run is over, my running is not carrying me anywhere, is not bringing me any of that joy and excitement. So I found it really hard to find any motivation, any reason to get out and run. So for a while I was not running at all. I would go on my bike or I would go swimming. I would do other things, but not running because it was probably too reminiscent of the World Run.
Yeah.
But as far as other aspects of the World Run finishing, well, I didn't really have time to settle. The next day after it was finished, I was on a 24 hours plane back to France. And when I landed there, I remember this moment where I'm at the airport, I collect my bag from the carousel, and I'm walking through the airport, and I look around at people, and nobody knows who I am or what I've done, because of course I'm not a celebrity. But there is this feeling of, okay, I'm back to the normal world now with other ordinary people. It was very, very strange. It was like all of a sudden being thrown into another world. Very strange. Mm.
I think I'd cry. Like
Yeah, it was strange because also when I went back to France and all my friends were there finally to celebrate with me. So there was a bit of celebration times. But it goes out very quickly. It's an adventure that lasts almost 3 years, and celebrations are over very quickly.
Yeah.
And then so you're left with all of this. So the good thing for me is I had a publishing contract with a publisher in France. So I was able to start working on the French book as soon as I wanted to, which I think after 2 or 3 months I was ready to start writing, and which was a big help because somehow it helped me keep the World Run alive and try to do my best to give it another life with people, with readers. And then I did that for the first year, and then the book was published in France. And then I felt the adventure was so rich, I wanted to write it in English and to write it differently. So again, I took pen and paper, and I took another 1 year or so to write the book in the English language. And I found a publisher in the US. So, I've been able to not put the story to bed and not have to grieve it so much because I gave it another life, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Mm.
It does, it does. I think it's also sometimes the thing is you've had such an incredible few years, with this purpose, this goal, becoming the second woman to run around the world, becoming the fastest woman to run around the world. And while you've been away running, like, life has just gone on for everybody else. And then when you come back and it's like celebration, it's like everything is still the same, but you have changed so much. And I suppose I'm so glad that you had the opportunity to write not only the book in French,
Mm.
but also the book in English as well, to be able to share your journey and to, I suppose, live that dream a little bit longer. And You've got another challenge that I don't think you've confirmed the dates for, but do you want to share what you're going to be doing next?
Well, it's not for the immediate future, so I keep it a bit on the wrap at the moment. But yeah, it's true that I have run across 4 continents, and there are 2 more uh, inhabited continents that I haven't crossed. Of course, I'm not counting Antarctica, the 7th continent, because I don't think I would enjoy running where no one lives. But yes, Africa, I have not run across, and I would like to one day when I feel ready again for the challenge, where my mind is in the right place for that. I think I will run across Africa for the experience of it, because it's a continent I don't know so well. I've been only to a few countries, because I'm sure the human experience is going to be fantastic. I'm sure that physically is going to be a hell of a challenge, and even geopolitically, because unfortunately, with the situation in some countries, wars, various difficulties, it's not going to be easy to cross. But yes, I would want at some point to tackle that challenge. So that will be another continent on the list of what I've run across. Yeah.
And have you gone back to your job in finance, or have you sort of left that world behind now and have just more into like the motivational speaking and writing and running realm?
Well, I've been very busy with the writing, and of course, I was lucky to get some good conferences. So the conferences provide me enough to be able to live really at the moment. So yeah, I'm having to think now. Now that the writing is done and the conferences are a more of an established thing for me, what else do I want to do? Strangely enough, lately I've been really I want to be a teacher, I think. I know it sounds like it's out of the blue, but there is something about transmitting, about um, because for me, I think all of this dream of adventure and everything was studied in childhood. And I think it's very important. Uh, my teachers were very important. My grandmother was very important. My parents, of course. Maybe I want to be part of that, of giving something to children and planting little seeds, and maybe it will grow into something meaningful for those children. So that's what I would like to do, I think. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And Lottie, how can people connect with you, find out more about you, your run, your books? Where are you most active on social media? If you're still active on social media, where should they go?
If you're a running fanatic, you can go to my website, Lootie Run. If you just Anyway, on Google, if you just do Lootie Runner, World Runner, you will find me. And the website has got all the maps, all the GPS data, all the blog posts of the of the World Run. So if you're a running fanatic, you can really dig into all this number and all this data and routes. I've got an Instagram and a Facebook account. So it's Lootie Runner. I guess it is Lootie Runner or Lootie Run Around the World, one or the other. Again, very easy to find on the internet. There are not many women called Lootie who have run around the world. So you can Google it, you'll find me. Yeah, so it's mostly Instagram, Facebook, and my website.
I love that. Thank you. And Lucy, for other women out there, I'd love for you to have the opportunity to share your final words of advice, final words of wisdom for other women out there who maybe don't want to run around the world, but they want to take on their own personal challenge, that excites them and scares them at the same time. Apart from just do it, what advice would you like to share?
Whatever big challenge you set yourself to do, whether it's at work or anything else, ask yourself why you're doing it and how aligned it is with who you are or who you want to be. And find that, I call it my motto. Find a motto that sums it up and that will always be at the forefront of your mind, because it's so easy to get derailed by yourself. Your own inner voice sometimes can be a disruptor, or it can be other people, or it can be circumstances. If this motto is not absolutely anchored in you and really aligned, you can't lie with it, then I don't think there is anything you can't do if you set your mind to it.
And what's your motto? What motto have you lived by?
Oh, my motto for the world run, like I said, was I want to see the world, enjoy it, and appreciate every step of the way. That was it. And I still want to see the world. I still want to enjoy it. And I think my life is still about this curiosity for the world around me. And this is a curiosity, like I said earlier, that was, set in childhood. I always want to know what's behind the next hill, what's beyond this forest and on the other side of the ocean. So I don't know, that's how I'm made. But whatever your appetite for life is, try to find something meaningful and aligned with who you are. And then if it is, there's nothing you can't do.
Fantastic. Leautey, thank you so much for going on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing more about your incredible run, and massive congratulations on the book as well, Lottie's World Run. I was sharing all the links to everything that you've talked about in the show notes, but thank you again for coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share your story.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, tribe, how are you doing? We are coming to the end of March. I don't know where the time is going. It is just flying by, but I really hope you enjoyed the episode with Lootie. What an absolute inspiration. Now, during that podcast episode, a very familiar name popped up, and that is the legend, Rosie Swale Pope. If you have not heard of Rosie, she is an absolute powerhouse of a woman who has actually been on the Tough Girl podcast twice before, and we've also done a live podcast recording with her. So Rosie first came on the Tough Girl podcast on November 5th, 2019. And she shares more about some of the amazing adventures that she's done and the amazing challenges that she's done. And one of the things that she does talk about is this 5-year run around the world, traveling over 20,000 miles to raise awareness for the early diagnosis of cancer. So she did that age 57 in 2003. When we were recording the episode, Rosie was age 73, and she was actually running 6,000 miles from Brighton to Kathmandu in Nepal. Unfortunately, COVID put a stop to that after she reached Turkey. But if you haven't given that episode a listen, go back and give it a listen. It is an absolute banger of a Tough Girl podcast episode. Rosie is just like no other woman I've ever spoken to. Such an inspiration, such a role model, just so lovely and kind-hearted and adventurous, and her amazing values and her grit and her determination and her love and passion for life. So highly recommend that you go and listen to that episode. I love the fact that out of the 7 people who've run around the world, we've had the 2 women on the Tough Girl podcast sharing their story, which is absolutely amazing. Everything that we have talked about today will be available in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. I've also got another little surprise for you. So you may see that when I'm out on adventures and challenges, I wear a Tough Girl buff. And I also send Tough Girl buffs to the guests of the Tough Girl podcast. Unfortunately, only if they're based in the UK. And this offer is only available if you are based in the UK, just because sending abroad these days is so difficult with customs. I used to be able to send buffs to the US, to Europe, to Australia, and it was just so easy. Obviously, things have changed and it just has become a lot more complicated. So if you are UK based and you would like your very own Tough Girl buff, I have 3 colors, white, grey and black. Send me a DM. I take payment via PayPal. They are £15 and I'll included in that is the post and packages, and I will send you out a Tough Girl buff with some Tough Girl stickers as well. And it's just another way that you can support the Tough Girl podcast. And I love to see you out there adventuring wearing your awesome Tough Girl buff. So if you would like a Tough Girl buff in black, white or grey, the cost is £15. It is for excuse me, it is for UK based individuals only at this point in time, as sending abroad is just so complicated. Just reach out, send me a DM. I'll then send you a link to my PayPal so you can do a little electronic transfer. Then I'll get your address and then I will pop it in the post to you. And I'm normally very efficient, so once you've let me know, you will get it in the next couple of days. Thank you again for supporting all of the work that I do. If you would like to help to increase the amount of female role models in the media, then please do visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast, and you can sign up as a patron. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.